Hey everyone, so we are inside the Lower Ninth Ward Living Museum right here, and I'm here with Becca. Are you a volunteer here or the organizer?
I'm currently working as the director
Okay.
for the Lower Ninth Ward Living Museum.
Okay, so we're here with the director of the museum, and she's going to tell us a little more of what they're trying to do, what their initiative is here with this museum in the Lower Ninth Ward.
Okay, so we just opened a week ago, so we're brand new and fresh, but we've been working on the project. As a lot of people have come in and out, but there's been a small group of us that have been working on it for about 2 years, collecting interviews and oral histories from local residents.
Right.
And so that's really our primary goal, is to be the longest running oral history collection from a neighborhood. So specifically, this is for the Lower Ninth Ward residents. And part of what's so inspiring about this is that one of the things that makes this neighborhood really unique is that generations run so deep here. And the roots are so deep, with families who have been living here for generations and generations. So when we have this museum going from the 1700s, the 1800s,
Right.
all the way until now, it's like really rich history connected by families that have lived here for generations.
And a lot of people don't really know the history. Like coming in here, I guess, even from the media standpoint, if you don't live in New Orleans, you knew that it affected a certain part of New Orleans called the Lower Ninth Ward, and you just probably figure it's a bunch of poverty-stricken residents, so a lot of people didn't really care. So by having this museum, it's a way of giving it that life back and showing people what was here prior to and what you guys have planned for the future.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely. I mean, this exhibit that we're sitting in front of, it just kind of points it out and lays out exactly how you said it. This is tour maps of New Orleans, and they just cut off and don't include the Lower Ninth Ward. And that's pretty standard, and I think this is one of the points we want to make, is that this is sometimes an intentionally forgotten ward, and that's something we hear a lot that the residents say in their interviews.
Right.
And that people say around here. You can see it 8 years after Katrina that that there's no infrastructure. Only 1 out of 7 schools has been rebuilt. No grocery stores. 1 in 5 families are back. And so I think that there's such a need to preserve this history in honor of the strength and resilience that has been shown by residents who live here.
I agree. I'm so happy that we stumbled upon this driving by. So let's walk through the museum and just briefly tell us, I guess, what each room is designed for.
Okay, so this first exhibit is really trying to paint what I just said, roots running deep here. There is a movie with Lower Ninth Ward residents talking about growing up here and some of the rich cultural traditions of the Lower Ninth Ward. So Mardi Gras Indians and the history of that being rooted in the Lower Ninth Ward and the crews that still exist today. So over here, it talks a little bit about the Red Hawk hunters and the Comanche hunters, the Choctaw hunters, and the different Mardi Gras Indian tribes that are from the Lower Ninth Ward and still here today. And then moving into this room, it's more of the early history of the Lower Ninth Ward. So you have the map of the plantations in New Orleans, and you can see how they correspond to the street names today. The history of slavery in the Lower Ninth Ward and how that's still so connected to how things are now and some of the disparities. And then over here, becoming a part of New Orleans and being isolated from New Orleans at the same time. You have the Great Mississippi River flood. This image is so crazy, with the levee being dynamited, blown up, and how that sort of connects to Betsy, which connects to Katrina.
It's an historical tie to the devastation that happened thereafter.
And you can see the repetition, the same themes happening. A community that's forgotten, but strong and resilient. Social aid and pleasure clubs are essentially like insurance pools of people, predominantly African American residents in the Lower Ninth Ward, coming together to support each other when the government wasn't there to support them. So that's a huge cultural tradition of the Lower Ninth Ward. And then also some of the key spiritual figures. Mother Catherine Seals is one of my favorites. She had a congregation down here, and she would kind of swoop in with her trombone with no shoes on, and she had urban gardening and just a lot of really cool things going on down here.
That's really awesome.
And then moving into the 20th century, One of the things that makes the Lower Ninth Ward so rich in history is that it was the ground zero for desegregation in the South. So 3 little girls on November 14, 1960, integrated into McDonough 19. And so, yeah, so this is an exhibit dedicated to them. And one of them, Miss Leona T, is in our, we interviewed her and she's actually in the video. Yeah, thank you so much for coming by. If you want to send the guest book, it's right in the front there.
You see, I know the story of like Ruby Bridges, and I think totally forgot that it happened right here in the Lower Ninth Ward.
Yeah.
So you always remember like the 4 little girls who went to the elementary school, but that happened right here.
Yeah, and Ruby Bridges was at France in the Upper Ninth. And then, but at the Lower Ninth, McDonough 19, which if you drive down St. Claude, it's still there, all boarded up. And that's where Tessie, Gail, and Leona integrated. They were in 1st grade. And the stories that Leona was telling us about immigrating were just insane. Like, you'd think that integration is going to school now with white kids, but she tells the story that they got there on the first day, and by the end of the day, they were the only ones in the whole school. Everyone else had been taken out. And so they went for a year and a half to school, just the 3 of them.
Wow.
It's just really crazy. And that happened here. Yeah, and then Hurricane Betsy is also a big part of this room. The Lower Ninth Ward was flooded almost 80% intensity, and stories of Betsy reflected residents talking about their memories in the video. And then, of course, all of the presidential visits. Obama was just here visiting Martin Luther King Charter School, which is the one school that's been reopened. And then of all of the famous people that have come from this neighborhood, Mahalia Jackson, Fats Domino, Kermit Ruffins, Kalamuya Salam, so many talented people who have come from here.